Right, guys, this one is, can we take a look, please? Thank you. So like I said yesterday, this is a bit of a, not really problem solving, but it's just unusual. They don't usually ask the third equation in this form. I don't think you'll get something like this for the third equation. I think if we're looking at the trend over the past few years, it will probably just look like the other ones that we've seen in the other papers. But let's look at this. Guys, I don't know if you remember when we did third laws last year. There was one that said that if you have, it was actually the nth root, it wasn't even the square root of a, multiplied by the nth root of b, that is equal to the nth root of ab. Right, that was one of the third laws. We just don't really use it often. So I don't blame you if you've forgotten that. So what that is saying is that if you have two thirds and the thirds are the same, right? So it's two square roots or two cube roots or two fourth roots, whatever. The roots are the same and you're multiplying them together. Then instead of having the two separate roots, you can combine them into one root, one third, the same one than what we started with, and you can just multiply those two things in the roots together. Right? So instead of having two separate roots, we turn that into one. Now guys, this is what is happening in this question actually, right? Because here we have a square root and there we have another square root and we are multiplying them together. That's what it means when we have those brackets written next to each other. So instead of leaving it as two separate square roots, we're going to combine it into one. Now, I think what a lot of you might think when seeing this is, oh, I have to FOIL this out. But in the way that it's written now, guys, if we're just looking at that first bracket there, how many terms is this actually? That's actually just one term. That's one square root, right? One term. Under that square root, we have two separate terms. But as it stands at the moment, this is just one term. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to combine this into one square root because we have a square root multiplied by a square root. And now we need to take, so now it's almost like we're leaving out that square root there and that one there, right? What is in that square root? Two terms, the square root of 32 plus x. That's what I have in the first square root, right? So I need to multiply that by what I have in the second square root, which is the square root of 32 minus x. And that is equal to x. Okay. So we're still multiplying those things together, but we're not multiplying them together in two separate square roots. We're doing one square root. Now guys, let's get rid of that big square root right from the start. What must I do to get rid of that? Square both sides, right? So I'm going to say that I'm just left with these two brackets. And what did I have on the other side? Just an x. So that is now getting squared, right? I'm squaring both sides. If you want to, like I said yesterday, you can show it in this first line like that. Okay. Now we have to FOIL. But the FOILing out is now going to be easier actually, because what we have here is two square roots that we're multiplying together. The square root of 32 multiplied by the square root of 32 is just going to be 32, right? It's the same as saying the square root of 32 squared. When you're multiplying something by itself, you're squaring it actually. Then we're doing outers. So negative x times the square root of 32. Now, you can actually kind of write this in any order, but we usually put the number in front of the variable, right? So we're going to write it like that. So those are the outers. Now we're going to multiply the inners. So we're going to say plus root 32x. And what's nice about that is because one is negative, the other one is positive, is they're going to cancel out. And then our last, what is x times negative x? Negative x squared. Okay, and that is equal to x squared. So now you can just show that there, those two terms are going to cancel out. So actually, guys, I'm left with 32 minus 2x squared. Because if I move this x squared over to that side, it's going to become another minus 2x squared, or another minus x squared. So I'm left with 32 minus 2x squared equal to 0. Now this looks a bit strange, hey? Normally we put the x squared first. So if I do that, let's see what we get. Negative 2x squared. What is the sign of the 32? It's positive actually, hey? Plus 32 equals 0. Now what? We can... So we can divide by negative 2, or we can move the 32 over. I'll show you both options because both are correct. So if you just move the 32 over, it's going to become minus 32, negative 32, and then we must divide by negative 2, right? What is negative 32 divided by negative 2? 16. There we go. When you take a square over, you have to plus or minus square root. Please remember. What do you mean? Oh no. Okay, so that's one way of doing it, but guys, I'm worried about this. So let's rather do it like this. Let's divide through by negative 2, because then we're going to get positive x squared, right? Negative 2x squared divided by negative 2 is x squared. What is positive 32 divided by negative 2? Negative 16. This is a difference of two squares, right? So we can factorize this. So we're going to say we have two brackets. We put the square roots in those brackets. So the square root of x squared is x. We put a plus in the first one. The square root of 16 is 4. And then our other bracket has to be x minus 4. Which x value am I going to get from my first bracket if I make it equal to 0? Negative 4. And from the second bracket, if I make that one equal to 0, I'm going to get positive 4. Same two answers, just written separately. Okay, where in black here, I've written them together.